Okay, let's start formally.
Okay, let's
Uh,
start.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night, Shokakat, Intat Fabian Teu. Today, tonight, or maybe in your morning, this is the moment for a podcast, for a new podcast. Here is my friend Paul. How are you, Paul?
I'm doing good. It's a beautiful day here in Japan. How is Mexico?
Well, Mexico City is having, in this moment, or we are under what can be called a very, very singular heat wave. It is extremely and strong this year. And by the way, Paul, this reminds me something that we have talked in my private classes and as an information for all the audience. I have started some private classes with people. It's open. It is not. There's no need for any other uh, for to do anything else but to be interested. But we have been discussing, we have been talking, and this year has a peculiarity connected with the man. Because although we can talk about global warming, or we can talk about how we are destroying the planet and everything to understand the situation as if action and effect, of course. But beyond that, there's something that is connected with the man, or something that is peculiarly interesting regarding the man that is ruling over this year. Because finally, we can see that what the spiritual guides said and the elders said as such is that every man enters with a lot of strong, is very strong, in a very, let's say, with a full of restraint, or in a strong way. And the metaphor that is usually the way in which the entry of the man is seen is like an in Maya, which said alcalte, coming from the Cashlan, the Spanish word alcalde, the mayor, and we apply this metaphor of a person that enters for the first time into office to begin to do the work as the mayor entering into the office. And we said that as the mayor, the man enters, and the man needs to know. The man needs first to begin to understand what is going to be. So, in Quiche ways, in the Mayan ways, you do always have to pay attention to the first 2 months of the man, the entry of the man. That let me tell you, by the way, in the way in which the ancient Maya Quiche calendar was established, the first month is called Nabe Man. The second month is Ukap Man. Like that. First man, second man, or first grandfather, second grandfather. Grandfather is man, is the name of the year carrier. So the first 2 months, which is going to span 40 days, from the entry of the man, the entry of the alcalde or the mayor into office, are said to be very dangerous. No matter which is the man that enters, it is said that these 40 days are has to be kept carefully because they can be dangerous. So and that's the reason the first month and the second month after the entry are going to be taken as that, as delicate, as dangerous. The man is entering into office, and most probably at the beginning there's going to be a mess. And by the way, there was a mess. There was no less than some days after the entry of the man that the war began on Ukraine and Russia. So, but beyond that, beyond what can be a mess, same thing happened a couple of years ago when COVID entered, or at least not when entered, but when it turned to be a pandemic. So it was the same time. As soon as Washaqit no, eight thought sensing entered into play, as soon as that Nawal entered, as that ma'am, that Nawal entered into office, then the pandemics started. Next year was more or less the same as a continuation, but during 9 Belgique, what happened was that the first variations of the original virus, or the original let's say illness, or whatever the way it is said, began to appear. So now finally we can see that the map and the entry and everything that is connected with that finally can be calculated under what the elders told us. Be careful of those 40 days. And by the way, this year, once again, the map, the present one, the present one, that is La Kyeh, is also making another mess. During these 40 days, since the entry in February, it has been such a situation for everybody in their own lives, as in healthy, with money, with everything. And it is not nothing necessarily connected with reactivation of activities now that we are not in pandemics anymore, but in endemics now. But anyways, this entry has been so strong for everybody. For everybody, it has been a challenge, a total challenge. How I think there's no person that could not couldn't be saying that this last, let's say, this last 40 days has been difficult. It has been a strong Nahual, La Kyeh, and the way it has been affecting the weather in extreme conditions, but also interconnections and the way societies are evolving has been touched by this strong Nahual. It has been a very particular entry.
Yeah, I always, think about two aspects of Nawal Kyeh, which is the first one is getting kicked off of the horse and falling face first into the ground. That's one part of it. And then there's another one, which is to ride the horse and to become stronger. So I've always found when the mom is Kyeh, I usually have some sort of a leveling up for my job or for my money or for something gets stronger in these years. And so it has kind of a two side. On the one side, it will totally kick your ass, and on the other side, it's very, very positive. And over the last, I don't know, maybe 10 years that I've been following this, I found that's what happens. Is that something that you've observed also?
Yeah, but my situation and my position in life is kind of different. If we look at myself as a spiritual guide, sometimes there's people that says that ask me, for example, things like, which is the best day or the most appropriate day that you are going to choose to work, for example, in ceremony? And for me, that's an absurd, because I work daily. So in my case, and by the way, I'm in contact with Nawals, the repercussions, the influence, the presence, or the way they move in reality, for me, it is kind of different. It is not the same. For example, for an average person that does not even knows the calendar, well, maybe they are going to have an opinion about this. But in my case, it's completely I for me, things move in a different way. I'm always in contact with the workers, as to say something. It's like when how can I say? How can I express this? It's it's as if being that I am continuously looking at days and also working with the days, some of the ways in which the Nahuals affects the people is not the way that they are going to affect me. And this happens also in dreams. This happens also in the, let's say, the gifts, or what can be said as the extraordinary ways in which some spiritual guides, not everyone, have a special extrasensual capabilities or possibilities. But anyways, as to respond in once again, yes, I have seen affectation, although it is not exactly the same as for the average person. But yes, there are changes, and as everything that as we began talking today, yes, for example, Mexico City, it is amazing what has been happening with the weather. Uh, this could be said that this is one of the hottest years, but I don't know if I said this before or if you know, but I keep let's say this book in which I'm always creating notes about the behavior of nature for every year under every Nahual. And the last heat wave in Mexico City was like it was in 2004, 2004. So it is very peculiar what is happening now in this moment. It is not so strange, but it's not following the pattern of getting hotter and hotter and hotter. This is just a particular hot year, and it seems it was brought by the deer, kyeh, the Nahual kyeh and the Mam kyeh. And I don't know if people is familiarized with this that I'm saying, but from all the Nahuals, 33 Nahuals, there are 20 that are nominals, there are 13 that are numerals, 33, but only four but all the numbers could be a Mam, but only four of the nominal Nahuals could be Mam. So a Nahual can be a Nahual and can be a Mam according to the year. There are only four year carriers, beaters, as kyeh, the deer, as the pathfinder, as nog, thinking, sensing, and ik, the wind. That's the kyeh way of counting, but all the numbers are Mam, because they are going to play the combination. And by the way, once again, for people that does not know about the Maya calendar, let me tell you that what you have been hearing about what is the nature of the numbers is practically a lie, an invention, fake, an abuse, even because what has been said is more on the realm of cultural appropriation. The numbers are also now. The number. Let me finish. The numbers are Nahuals also, and not only Nahuals, they are also Mams. So their significance is going to be relevant also not only for the day-by-day counting of time, but for the yearly count of time, which is something that nobody talks about. And this has to be stressed. This is the moment in which we have to fix this to understand precisely things as they has to be.
I was gonna say a lot of some of the things that you might see on the internet or whatever, some of it is malevolent, and there are some there is some intentionally bad information, but also there's a lot of fantasy. Like there's a lot of people they don't know or they don't have any experience, and so they know just a little bit of something, and then they fill in the empty spaces with their imagination. And it's not like it's, I don't think it's bad. It's just not accurate.
Well,
Is that
let's
fair to say?
let's speak about beyond bad. There's no good, there's no bad. But there could be imagination. There could be honest efforts. But the problem is that the person does not say it is a way to try to understand, or they don't talk about that as such, as I think this is, or I have made a research, or this is probably what it is. No, usually they say stuff like that. This is the Mayans' ways. As for example, what happens with
That's
the way
true. Yeah,
you,
that's true.
and that is malevolent. You can be honest and say, well, I'm developing
Yeah.
this. I'm developing this based on the Mayan calendar. But as everything with the Argüelles calendar is like, that is not a Mayan calendar. That is inspired, and it is a cultural appropriation, an extraction that only benefits them and not the Maya people.
That, I think, to
Maybe
me
it's
is
not maybe it's not
that's
maybe
where I
it's
draw
not
the
bad.
line.
But maybe it's not bad, but it's malevolent to try to portray something as original when it is not. And by the way, there's the original way, and people is not. It's easier just to go to your computer because you pay your internet and maybe you can get something. Why don't you travel? Why don't you go to the mountains? Get dirty, learn the language, talk to the people. But that's what that. Maybe it's not that bad, and maybe it is not malevolent, but just doing inventions of stuff is not okay, and it is
Yeah,
not okay for us, the
yeah,
Mayans.
I think so. Yeah, and in that case, it does cause harm. Because there is a real way, and it makes it more difficult for people to access it. But luckily, we're doing this podcast to try to help the situation, and episode by episode, month by month, year by year, I think we're making an impact. So I hope we can continue to do it, and that we inspire more people to study Mayan language, and also travel to Mayan lands, and so forth.
Well, let's hope uh, a situation to change, because since 2012 we have been carrying a lot of misinterpretation of what is the real situation. As for example, this ideosity, let me call it like that, of the halaken and the in lakech, for example.
In
I know
Lakesh, that's a good one. Yeah.
there's a lot of people that I know that they said, okay, are you a Mayan spiritual guide or a Mayan priest, which is not the word to talk about, but anyways. And there could be people that does not really knows which is the real terminology or the real way to talk about, and they began with the in la cage, and it's like, oh my god, once again, once again. There, uh, that is false. It is not okay. It is a falsification. That is not correct, and it is not okay to put things into the people's, and especially things we haven't said. That is not a proper way to talk in Mayan. So, but sadly, it's the most common. And there's a lot of people tattooing, using tattoos like that and stuff. Well, okay, that's it. That's the way it is. So maybe it's not bad. Maybe that could be not that malevolent. Maybe there's good intentions, but anyways, it's not the correct.
Yeah, well, this is actually quite a vast problem, because on the one side, there's the stupid hippie stuff, where they'll say some of this stuff, and sometimes their intentions are good and they're nice people. They don't have good information, or sometimes they have too much imagination or something. But then there's another side, which is the academic side.
Oh,
See, and they really, with a big system, a lot of money, and sometimes very malevolently go through and to try to rearrange things to fit their ideas. Well,
and
one of the things that really bugs me, because there's actually quite a large academic Mayan community online. There's a lot of it. And they, first of all, they separate themselves from the general public. And so they have their own special language and the way that they talk, and it's not open. And another thing that they've done is they really, really try to separate the ancient Maya from the contemporary Maya. And they'll argue things that are really racist. And they'll just say, oh, the contemporary Maya, they're just stupid peasants. But the ancient Maya, they were so beautiful, and they're so obsessed with the past. And again, it's their imagination, how they imagine the past. And then
yeah,
and how they separate it from the contemporary situation, and then it's private, and the way that they talk to the public is so arrogant. They really bug me personally, because I'm not part of the academic community, but I very much study and belong to and research and volunteer a lot of my time and energy to studying Mayan things.
yeah, I know. And they live for their own world, and usually they are divorced from the reality of the peoples, the lands. For example, one day I was, I'm not going to say the name, but one day I was on a conference, and I had nothing prepared and anything, and it was like, and the original theme was about pilgrimages. Well, then I said, well, okay, I'm going to talk about Mayans, pilgrimages, and the ways that we go to mountains, and what we do, how we do prepare, and everything. When I descended and when I finalized, there was this woman, which is a very senior academical woman, and she began to tell me that according to her studies, some things were quite different, or a little thing like this. And I was like, well, and I said, what have you been reading that is telling you that stuff? And she told me which ones were those works. And after that, I said, well, it's quite more or less accurate. But and I asked her, have you ever been on the land? Have you ever been on these pilgrimages? Have you ever go and experience what has been happening? And she told me, I have been, very madly, and she was very angry. She said, I have been 60 years of my life on research, she said. I know every single page, every single inch of the library. I know every single book that is published and everything, but I have never went out my office. But she does not know what is happening in the outside. She does not know. She has only she can read stuff, but it's filtered by the researcher, or the one that is uh, the person that she's quoting or something. But in reality, look at that. She hasn't went out. She does not know reality. It's like, I don't know, like a computer in the matrix. She does not know the reality. She does not know what is, for example, what do people talk about when they are in a pilgrimage? What are their desires? What are their real motivations? She's only quoting all the contemporary Mayans things about, they still think the earth is a living being and stuff like that. She's only quoting, but she's not listening to the actual people's saying, leaders, what they said. She has never been on the field. And I was like, well, next time, I said, maybe you are not going to be 100%, let's say, uh, you are not completely satisfied with what I said, with what I speak or what I talk, but you have never went out your office. Please, at least make the effort of one day uh, to try to go with the peoples and to go hand by hand or whatever. But just quoting what the other said, suddenly they made a mess. And suddenly the mess, little by little, becomes to be the truth. And then people is quoting that mess. And sometimes that's what it is. They live on their own world and their goals and stuff is only academicals. Usually they divorce from the people. I have another thing about that. I remember this researcher that arrived home, and this in Guatemala, and he said, well, I introduced him to some people, to my family, to some spiritual leaders. I think he's honest, but he said since the first moment, I only, due to the fact that the university I work with and blah, 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 my budget is limited and blah, blah, blah. So, and he opened the notebook and he said, I will appreciate if you answer my questions and blah, blah, blah. And all the people that I was introducing him were like, so your university didn't give you enough money for the budget, so you have to ask us the questions immediately without anything. What do you think you are? That we are just like parrots responding to food or what? And the man just took off the notebook to ask his questions, and that is not appropriate. That is not good at all. Sometimes they made that, and I was scolded by many people saying, don't bring people like that. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought he was honest, but at the end he made the same mistake. Just tell me your truths. I have these 10 questions for everyone. And what? Are we obligated to what? To answer at the moment? You have to stay with the people, live with the people, understand the situation, live the situation, enter into the field. At least is what I will say. Just quoting from the outside or from the internet, it makes no sense. Or it makes no sense. But anyway, sometimes there are good researchers you can use, you can follow, you can understand. So academics is not necessarily that wrong. It has some things that are not that quite appropriate, but anyways, it's not that bad as the others. The others, oh my gosh, every INLA cage that I received is like, oh, another one. And sometimes they jump, like, INLA cage. Did you do ayahuasca? And stuff like that.
So, how about the development of archaeological sites by huge companies, universities, commercial interests and stuff? I've heard sort of mixed reviews. Like on the one side, this has a very negative impact on Mayan people, and then on the other one, it has a very positive impact. So what do you think about that?
It depends on it depends, or what I have seen. Let me tell this to the audience, what I have seen, what has been my experience. I shall say that it depends on the university, it depends on the researchers. It cannot be said that this is that this happens in every situation. There has been bad experiences, there has been good, beautiful experiences. Some years ago, the director of the Museum of the America or America Museum in Madrid, Spain. One day he said that he made a huge mistake. But anyways, he said that he was directing these excavations and everything in Lavantún, Belize. And he said that, and he was some sort of saying that he was the one that was bringing some sort of knowledge to the peoples. And he said, because the Mayans, the contemporary Mayans does not know what those stones are, what those ruins are, or what those temples are. He said that in the open television. And he portrayed himself as the bringer of knowledge to the Mayans, who were so stupid and ignorant that they didn't know what those temples were. Oh my gosh, that was such a mistake. There's a lot of Mayan people who can do stuff. If I go, I don't know, to Valencia and everything, maybe I can find a peasant that does not know about the Spain kingdom, or that maybe does not know everything about their past. And that is for every culture. But this man was, oh, and we arrived and we told and we said and we blah, blah, blah. But because the Mayans does not know. And that was such a horrible and terrible mistake. Sometimes they do stuff like that, and it is not really a good experience even to listen to people like that. Obviously, it is very, very.
What about the insistence that the old Popol Vuh was different, or that the kyeh Popol Vuh was not very old and it was only contemporary and was contaminated, and later discovering that it was very accurate and very ancient?
Well, that's the truth. What happens is that also in the academical ways, and also they also have their own, let's say, fashions during time. Sometimes they say, because for example, if we look back at what was the first, let's say, archaeological, let's say, well, not even archaeological in those days, but if we look at the past and we saw how they were, how the temples or the cities were discovered, most of them weren't looking for Mayans. Some of them were looking for the lost tribes of Israel, and some of them were trying to look for the Atlantis people from Lemuria. Even when some of them entered into places like remote cities on the jungle, they thought that they were discovering the Atlantis. Later on, things changed. But according to the times in the Western world, according to some, as I said, fashions or stuff, sometimes they develop stuff like that. As for example, I remember, and I can't remember still because I was a kid, in which some things connected or related with communism and the fight between layers of society were applied to try to understand the collapse of the Mayans. Now that is irrelevant and absurd and blah, blah, blah. But according to our eyes, in the 70s, people were so satisfied thinking that the peasants made a revolt and a riot, and that they burned all the temples and all the houses of the bourgeois rulers and stuff like that. Now nobody's talking about that. And it is good. The scientific paradigm can change, but there's something. Yeah, sometimes it changes, but sometimes what they say before stays forever. and that is something also that we have to fight back.
It's like, for example, the insistence of the mom. The academic world will insist on using Cholan Mayan languages, and they will insist on using Cholan Mayan dates rather than contemporary kyeh ones.
Well, but those are correct. what happens, and this is something that has to be said also, is that there was not an unified, let's say, a tradition or a way of accounting exactly the same way for everybody. There were differences. There are differences in towns. For example, in the old ways, in the let's talk about the post-classic. The year carriers were different in Guatemala, were different in Yucatan, were different in Mexico, central Mexico. So there's not a there's if the calendar is based on a basic count, which is a kyeh, anyways there are differences in the wage that Solking was applied, and sometimes the year carriers are different. There has been even changes, recent changes. For example, the Kaqchikel people, which we can call as a branch of the Quichean languages or peoples or linguistic communities, they in the recent years they shift from the Quiche count to shift to their own, and they changed the arrival of the man by consensus in between them. So not everybody applies that change, but they did it anyway. So the order of days are the same for everybody, but the way you structure that order of days, or the, let's say, the way in which you will want or you will like some of the relevant dates or things like that can be different according to culture. So there's no way to say that the kyeh is the only one and the most important. The kyeh is a way to apply that knowledge. But the Chol and the Yucatecan, although not really active in the oral ways, in the retransmission of the oral knowledge, anyways, is their own way. It is it's different, but it's their own ways. And this happens continuously with differences in between the Mayan towns. Remember that there was not a unified Mayan kingdom or a unified Mayan nation. Now we can call it like that, divided into in 5 countries, but in the old times there was no way to talk about the Mayan Empire. Remember that they were also using and applying the terms of the old Egypt kingdom, and as the old empire, the new empire, and stuff, and that is not what happened in Mayan lands. In here, there was more like we were like functioning more like cells, kingdoms, with connections and stuff, and evolving everyone. And sometimes some of those kingdoms use their own ways to follow the calendarics.
It's very fascinating, your respect and appreciation for the academical world.
Well, in a sense, well, I know what happens on the field. I know what happens in between peoples. I know, because differentially from what happens, let's say, with just data, the way an spiritual guide collects data is data for to be applied. So, for example, as I have been saying, I learned, and I learned, although I didn't want to, but I learned midwifery. I'm not going to be playing with the life of a baby. This knowledge has to be accurate, and I cannot halaken the baby. I have to apply the knowledge as the knowledge is. I cannot be ghosting. I cannot be ghosting me in the sense of I cannot be using my imagination to try to see. No. In this case, I need the real knowledge. And that's the way we have to function. So sometimes I can read academical papers and stuff that can help me to understand, or even to make measurements, or to compare different traditions, or even to try to understand something, to go and visit a community. Those things can help me, but I have to read carefully. because I need to read in the sense of what is knowledge as we know the knowledge, not as they said the knowledge is. As exactly as I said with this woman, I have been in different pilgrimages during decades, but she hasn't went out from her office. Okay, you have an opinion. I have been there. But anyway, some things here and there helps.
And things you were thinking about. Maybe one more thing we can talk about publicly on this podcast, which would be fun. I remember you said this to me a while ago, which is one of the most famous stories in the media was the stories of the crystal skulls. So,
Oh my God.
is there anything you have to say about that? Maybe kind of once and for all, or
No, there's no. Well, there are beautiful pieces made of quartz, crystal rock. There are so many beautiful things about lapidary work with different stones, but there's, for example, Nahual E, the Pathfinder, is represented by a skull, and sometimes it can be called a crystal skull. But no, there's nothing that has to be like the authentic legend, like the sort of an Indiana Jones stuff. Remember Indiana Jones, like uh
I do remember. Yeah, I saw the movie.
yeah, like reuniting the skulls. There's the other day I was invited. There was this man that was saying that he had an invitation for, obviously $200 to go, and they were going to open one of the skulls. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, it's false, it's truth, and it makes no sense, anyways. Because whenever the skulls speak, they only speak contemporary lore. So suddenly there's an skull speaking about protecting the Mother Earth, and it's like, oh my gosh, what? Can you tell us something relevant or something interesting? And no, at the end, it's like, oh yes, I got this alienation, this vibration and stuff, but it's not really true.
So, are there any authentic Mayan crystal skulls that you know of?
Yeah, but it is small pieces, not that big. It's mostly for neck collars. Um, there are masks, also flat ones, but they were lapidary work, not precisely like the oracle stones the priest was holding in this whatever. No, that's false.
Yeah, because it was quite famous around 2012 that the Mayans had carved these perfect crystal skulls exactly to the size of a real human skull, and I don't know, it looks like it was made by a laser, and it's impossible to recreate it and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, from what I gather, that is absolutely not true.
Exactly, that is not true.
I see.
And there's no. And by the way, yeah, sometimes you can find stone skulls in the lands in some places in which, for sure, there was an occupation. But once again, it's not like that. They are not used for that. And there are malevolent contemporary atheists who hold stuff like that. But there's no way, there's no necessity. That is just a fantasy, a horrible one that is damaging everything also.
Yeah, that's kind of getting into the nature of our conversation. Is sometimes bad information can cause harm to communities and in histories and so forth. So one of the very harmful, because I mean Hollywood was really behind the Crystal Skull story. They pushed it with a huge Steven Spielberg movie in
Well, but
2012.
it has to be. But well, it is okay. It's entertainment. That's okay. Fantasy and everything. That is entertainment. I find no problem with Indiana Jones in that sense. It's just a fantasy. The problem is that there's a lot of people that jump from that fantasy to sell you a workshop to program your crystal skull, which is so crazy. And that is not mine.
I've seen a lot of workshops for everything since the pandemic. This is the age of online workshops.
Mm. Yeah, there's a lot. Yes. Yes, there's a lot.
So maybe continuing with crystal skulls and stuff, are there any stones or crystals like crystals have a lot of folklore attached to them, crystals, magical stones, and so forth. Healing rocks and stuff. Maybe
Let me tell you something, because there are authentic practices, there are authentic secret practices till these days. There are authentic ways of preparing or doing additional work with some certain spiritual guides, chosen ones. There are things, but those are not for the public, and those are not for to talk about. And none of them includes anything, as we have heard, about fantasies from the Western world. There's nothing like that. So maybe there's no end. There's not going to be end for this. Because for example, and by the way, it only happens with the Mayans. If you talk about the Mexica peoples or the Mixtec peoples or whatever, nothing. But as soon as you began to talk about the Mayans, everything turns to be UFOs, conspiracy, reptilians, Anunnakis, and stuff like that. We hold our own secret practices. There are a lot of things involving crystal quartz pieces. There are a lot of things that are very beautiful to be seen, but not as in the way as it has been portrayed in any sense.
Yeah, that's very helpful, I think, because there's back to the hippies, there is an entire crystal shop industry, not only in Mexico and Guatemala, but around the world.
Is how did you say? Well, yes, it's let's say fake spirituality menu you can from which you can choose something. Yes, and there's a lot of people like that. The other day there was a man. He come to my place and he was saying that if I can sell him some materials for to perform a ceremony, and I was like, yes, of course, why not? I was preparing the candles, and when I was preparing the black candles that represents the night, he began like, oh no, not like that, not black ones, and I was like, why? No, because that represents evilness, and I was like, which kind of Maya you are? What is your preparation? Who was your teacher? Black is your hair, for example. Black is the night. Which is the problem with that? There's a lot of people like that. Sometimes I put people into test. Like whenever they say a crazy affirmation, I will say, can you translate that into any Mayan language just to see how it adjusts? to the way it sounds or the language you are applying. And they don't even speak Mayan. They don't know about the linguistics and the poetics of Mayans. So as soon as there a person that is in necessity that does not know, there's going to be another one that is going to sell whatever they will want to sell.
Yeah, well, I like how you said it is this a spiritual fast food or a menu. I think that's really funny, and it applies. You know, if there's no food and the only thing to eat is McDonald's, then the people are gonna all go to McDonald's. But you know, if there's lots of different varieties of choices of fresh, homemade traditional foods, you know, that are healthy, um, then it's easier to make a positive choice.
Yeah, and that is easy to access. There's this man, I can say his name is Julian Kateri. This man has a huge collection of DVDs, CDs, audio, and stuff for you to become a spiritual guide in 20 days. And this man speaks with a mixture of Carlos Castaneda stuff. He speaks like New Age stuff. He's mixing Argüelles, some Quiche stuff, some things from the books and stuff. And now he's ready. He had a collection, a course, and you can become a spiritual guide in 20 days. And that is just one case. I know a lot of people that even people that listens to this podcast to get ideas to sell. I know people.
I've seen that. I've seen some of our ideas popping up on the commercial side of things.
Yeah, I have
But
seen that they are.
I see that as good. You know, maybe even if what they're selling is kind of McDonald's, it shows that we have an effect. You know, they're following us, and we're trying to set a good example for everybody to follow. And so I see that as a good thing.
Well, more or less, not always, because also what happens, well, anyways, what happens is that they are not, let's say, openly saying this is Tata Pavian's knowledge. They just said, well, I know from this elderly man in the mountains, and
that's part
and
of
are,
it. Yeah, that's part of our cost. Is people are not going to say where they got the information. Yeah, that's true.
so, and that is so peculiar. And it's so funny. Sometimes when I hear about my history, sometimes a little bit changed some of the affirmations that I have been done, but not quite well understood. I can see that they are listening to me, or at least quoting me from different parts. But that's why my book is not about a manual to understand stuff. It's just a way to understand the Mayan philosophy of pregnancy, for example, and the epistemology of the calendar. But it's not clear enough for people who wouldn't want to really dive into knowledge. It's just like, yes, as I said, it's very easy to open the computer and to find the information in your own desk. That's not the way.
I have a question too, which is your book, The Flower Counter. Did it ever get released in English?
No.
Interesting.
No. What pandemics has been done, what pandemics did was to slow down everything. And until this moment, that is not yet really available.
Well, that is disappointing, but I think I knew that, but I've been watching to see if I could get a copy of it, but not yet. Hey?
Well, you can learn a little. Well, I don't. Well, how can I say? It has been very difficult for everybody. So the book is still on preparation. There's another version of my first book in Portuguese, and the Hebrew version is also ready to be published. But
Did you
pandemics
get
and
the
everything
Hebrew
has.
version? The Hebrew version is finished, eh?
What?
You got the Hebrew version finished. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
Good.
It only needed a little, let's say, some person keen on linguistics to understand the stuff, because it was very difficult to understand, to translate some expressions, and that is obviously is natural. It will, in the sense of what is differences between cultures, it can be comprehensible. Because, for example, Ushlab, the word as such, the word that we use for the inner ways of a consciousness, can also define a lot of more stuff. But if you apply the same word to another language, in the other language can really make no sense. And we have to fight for two. And by the way, it is very peculiar because Hebrew language has a long history of development, as well as Mayans. They are both millenary idioms, and they have or hold their differences. But anyways, it's difficult. Sometimes it's difficult to make a bridge because they belong to different ways of understanding reality. But anyways, it has been done. So the only thing that I can say is that due to pandemics, due to the ways in which things has been going in the recent times, um, they all the publications has slowed down. They are not that. Things has been very slow to publish now, and they have even told me like, let's wait a little bit because there's no still like that big public. Although the first book has been sold in now more than 60 countries. Anyways, it's very slow still. What I wanted to introduce or to present, it was not like a boring book, and I said boring for men book, about the feminine ways of a pregnant woman. No, it's not about that. It's a book about the epistemology of the Mayan calendar, in the sense or regarding to how the Mayan calendar is seen through the eyes of the human being, or how can you explain that in the eyes of a creation. Because differentially from what is another ways of, let's say, spiritual practices regarding astrology or stuff, well, sometimes we can say, well, yes, that cluster, well, maybe that constellation, well, maybe the ancient Babylonian creators of the calendar, whatever you will want. But in the Maya ways, there's no way to go or to understand Maya astrology in that sense, because for principle, it's not an astrology, and it's a pregnancy is a story of pregnancy, gravitatology, and the point is that the Maya calendar needs not to go onto crazy or to adjust or to justify crazy schemes. No, you are the result of a sexual act, and you are the result of the interaction between mom and dad, or mom and a syringe in artificial insemination, and then pregnancy, and there's no other way for human beings. So my book is about the philosophy of the Mayan calendar and the epistemology of the Mayan calendar regarding the uses contemporary regarding the uses, or the way in which is comprehensible for us, not as a crazy thing, but as the actual stuff. You were created in your mother's womb. So, and that's the point, and I elaborate stuff about that. But due to Due to that, sometimes people confuse the stuff, but what was my effort to present an epistemology in the philosophical sense or in the social science to understand something for to later on develop more stuff about that. But my idea was to make you the introduction, giving you the roots and how we get that knowledge or how we do function in perception and and cognition to understand this knowledge. That's what is my book about. Uh, um, but well, I didn't talk how the pyramids were built by aliens, so some people is disappointed about my book.
Well, don't you think it's that many academics would refute or disagree or challenge your thesis of the
No,
basis,
there
right?
there hasn't been any any authentic academic or any cultured academic that has talked badly about my book. Not that I know, and not that I have seen. I have been quoted here and there in some theses, uh, uh, but my book was not directed for them. First of all, I wrote it just because I wanted to express an idea and to share some knowledge and to let them be in the world as such. Because how can I say? Um, I wanted the book to be for open audience, and although I also have an academical formation, that was not my point. That was not my point. I also dislike sometimes strongly the ways in which academia expresses no go on to the diffusion or spreading the word about stuff. Sometimes it's very helpful. Once again, I'm not going to say no, but but there are things that I will better prefer. No, there were things that I saw and then I choose not to go on to producing a book for academics. So my book is not like a boring reading and that you need background. I try to begin with the most basic ideas to begin to develop all the sophistication. There's people who can understand at the first reading. There's people who cannot understand at the first reading. Some people contact. What I love is that sometimes there's people that contacted me and to tell me right about. I would want to know more about this. I would want to know more about that, and I love when people would want to know more about or to go deep into what this knowledge is. It's the basics. Is once again is epistemology of a knowledge, of an ancient knowledge.
But there's lots of people that would, stand very firmly against that claim, uh, and that's not a widely accepted thing that the Mayan calendar is based off of pregnancy. That is a popular theory, but it's not accepted as a fact universally,
No,
right?
here and there, it depends.
Some people believe that and they'll stand by, but others really don't.
Well, there's still an speculation as such about the entire Mayan calendar, about foundations and stuff, but I'm not that into proving the academics that I am right. They can say whatever they want. As I told you, just 100 years ago, they thought that they discovered Atlantis. So I
Well,
just
hold on. Actually, I have something interesting to say about that, which is, one thing that I thought that was always very fascinating. What a lot of the academic Mayan researchers are Mormons. There's a lot of
oh
Mormons down there, right? Isn't that interesting? I like Mormons, by the way.
yeah, it is amazing to see that. Of course,
And then
it
what
is.
what are they doing exactly? Are they trying to prove their Bible, or Or what's their interest? Why are there so many of them so interested in this subject, in Mayan things?
Just because this man, John Smith, said that Jesus Christ was preaching on these lands. Could you believe that?
Yeah, well, the thing is that
The first book of the Mormon included some illustrations in which Jesus Christ, a Jew man from the first century, is walking in the ruins of Palenque. Or, well, not in the ruins, in the city of Palenque. So,
interesting.
yeah, it is just like, what? But anyways, that's what happens. And people believe in that strongly. By the way,
Serious
for example,
academic doctors believe that.
yeah, they do
Leading
believe in
world,
that.
very, very, very heavily funded, millions of dollars budgets, research, PhDs from mainstream universities believe this.
Yes, I know that. There's people that there are Mormons that sometimes they respect my position about the Maya, and they said, "Well, it's because Jesus Christ teach you stuff." Like, oh, yes, of course. some, in a sense, Mormons are the ones that make not that too much harm to the contemporary Mayan priests because
That's
they
why I like
said,
Mormons. That's why I like Mormons. They
I
don't,
don't
yeah,
like.
I love them.
Anyways, I don't like to be said that what I'm holding, they respect what I teach because Jesus Christ was the one that teach this to the Mayans 1,000 years ago. So it's ridiculous. But the
See, so the
Mormons
thing that,
believe. But the Mormons strong believe in that.
oh yeah, oh yeah, they're ready to die for it. Um,
Yeah.
but the thing, the Mormons is it's not. So if you look at what they're doing, usually what they're doing is really, really good. But then if you ask why are you doing it? Why they're doing it is crazy. But what they do is good. But why they do it is crazy.
Well, I see more harm. But anyways, because at the end, respectful or not, they are breaking the nucleus of Mayan societies by doing conversion and stuff. And they well, so sorry Mormons that are listening to this audio, but they say stupidity and nonsense. And the idea of the golden tables and John Smith and everything is just an insult to the Mayan peoples to later on try to think that Jesus Christ was on Palenque and stuff like that. It is an absurd, as most of Mormons' lore are. So sorry to say, but you are breaking the communities and you are dividing families and you are producing a lot of pain in a land. It's not respectful to just to come and say this is the truth and what you do is not the truth, and they are making a lot of damage in the Maya, in between the Mayan societies. But anyways,
Well, the thing
what
about
can
that's
I
so
will not.
interesting. Well, no, it's a big issue, and it has to do with contemporary Mayans because you know there's a lot of Christian groups down there with missionaries and doing conversions and all this stuff, and the Mormons are just one of the groups.
Yeah,
Um, but of course, the originals are the Catholics. That's the ancient break the indigenous sort of model that we
yeah,
use.
but anyways, contemporary Catholics are more open in the sense of syncretism. There are towns in which the priest or even the let's say what is the tradition of performing ceremonies can be done in the church or outside the church, and the priest can come and see that. On the other hand, the other goes on to more orthodox reading of the Bible, and they can get very, very violent and
That's
terrible.
true. They can. They
And
can.
and 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 I have
Crazy.
been shocked. For example, me and my teacher, we were one day on a place that is called Patojil, Patojil, from the ruling, let's say, more important icon or a more important symbol, more important God, if you want to call it like that, is whatever you want to call. And this Pato hillside is in the middle of a forest, and it is not unusual to listen that they are shooting with guns and that they are making this mess. And one day they almost killed my teacher. So I'm not happy about that. I can forget, I can forgive, and I can forget. But anyways, every time that you go to an isolated place in a mountain, you have to be careful because now they are the new Jerusalem members or whatever they are. They can do, they can be very nasty and they can do very horrible things to people. There has been people killed by evangelicals
Yeah,
and
no, that's
Mormons also.
very true. Yeah, I've never had a bad encounter with Mormons, but I could imagine that they're so fanatical about their religion that it becomes dangerous. Because I've seen other religious groups in that same situation.
Well, but fortunately, there are people that are chosen, people in between the communities who hold the knowledge. There are a lot of very already, and I'm happy to say, elderly people who hold very beautiful knowledge. And as I told you, while in LA, you can get a cacao ceremony, which are fake. Obviously, there are no cacao ceremonies now. They are another fashion that is like, okay, let's the Mayan ceremony, cacao ceremony, drinking ceremony, drink cacao ceremony, which is fake. No Mayan does ceremony like that. But while you're offered that, there are real and authentic practices down in the mountain, which are the real ones. Unfortunately, they are still very, very well, some of them very well preserved in between honest individuals. So that's the sad part. If you want to buy, it's like now it's like entering into the market. You can get something according to what you would want. And there's even a saying with the elders that said that say nothing, let's keep them over there. If they would want to see us like that, okay, say nothing. This, anyways, we are doing our jobs and stuff. Like I prefer to lie to you, but to preserve my knowledge, because there are people that are very bright and intelligent. It is not like these directors of the Museum of America saying that we Mayans, we don't know how the pyramids were built and what was the purpose for. That is not true.
Yeah, I thought that was very arrogant and harmful.
We call him by the phone directly to the TV program, and he was some epigraphist friends, and we wrote letters and stuff. And later he sent like a message in which he regret saying that, and he said that well, he was not speaking openly about every Mayan individual, but no, he said that. He just tried to shift the attention to something else, but at the end he didn't really apologize. He was just I don't know. He just went to the corner and say something, but not really an authentic or neither an apologize, neither a good explanation of the stuff. Really.
So this is another conversation, but uh, I've seen a lot over the last few years about this place El Mirador,
Mm-hmm.
and it's rewriting Mayan history, and they discovered so many things about what they didn't know before, and then I've also heard that they're making a big reserve, which is having a negative impact on the locals. I remember I had a guest, Zach. You remember Zach? He was a member of our class. He was the academic guy, and he was saying that it was causing big environmental destruction for the communities and so forth.
And it is true. And also this peculiar president of Mexico who was so stubborn to open this Maya train and stuff, who has been destroying a lot of portions of the jungles, the now very few jungles that still exist, and that is such an I don't know which is the word in English, but ecocidium, an ecological drama.
Ecosystem. I see. Ecological drama is okay. Yeah, that's fine. I understand that.
Ecological massacre. But he's so stubborn that he didn't listen to anything or to anyone, and it is making such a horrible damage.
That's the Mayan
There's
train.
another there's another phenomenon. There's this place, this touristical place that is called Xcaret, which is famous because it offers like a culture, once again, like a kind of a little cultural offer, but directed for open tourism. That is called, the place is called Xcaret. Now that place has rise up a movement of resistance against folklorization of the ancient knowledge. And now we call it the escaretization, or escaretization, yes, of the culture, because they have been doing so much stuff like dances. They bring the flyers from Papantla as Mexica dancers, supposed to be Mayan priests and stuff. So that is going into the folklorization of culture. And now what people knows, what people talks about, what the tourists talk about is about what is about the folklorization. As for example, the Mayan weddings. In which a priest from any place from South America, I'm not going to say Argentina, but mostly they are the ones those that make giving you a wedding. Yeah, of course. There's this escaretization of, or anything, the folklorization of the culture has been also making so much damage. And that's what people say, and that's what people later on is going to quote, and that is why later on you're going to be said in la quecha, in la quecha, in la quecha. But well, that's a contemporary situation. I'm not going to complain.
Here's a question: Where is the phrase "in la catch" come from? Do you know?
Yeah, there was this man, Francisco Paredes, who was an authentic Maya. Well, he was born as a Maya. He holded authentic knowledge. He wrote this book about the Mayan thought, Pensamiento Mayan, something. And he just coined and created those words based on the authentic Yucatecan language, but it's not something that in Yucatan is used, neither in the ancient ways, neither in the contemporary ways. But he belongs to those times in which Maya knowledge was like a fashion to begin to understand. It was not that divorced from Atlantis and Lemuria and Anunnakis and stuff like that, but it's still trying to I don't say to talk about fantastic knowledge that the Maya always knew. The next episode obviously is going to be Argüelles, and they are the ones that really sell books. But yes, this image was created by an authentic man, a Mayan man with authentic knowledge, but it makes no sense. And just because he was Mayan does not mean that it has is legit. It is not. It is just a creation, but it got a lot of attention. And well, this is the moment. We are still 60, 70 years after the first publication of the book that we're still fighting back the in la queche stuff. Domingo Paredes.
That's
So,
amazing. I heard the similar thing about the galactic butterfly. I don't know what it's called in mine, but it's sort of the same kind of a thing, or it's a modern. But at least in La Catch was made by a Mayan person.
well, let's say that at least, but that's not make it legit. Let's be honest and talk about the truth. That is another mistake.
Amazing. Well, the Mayan world is still just as fascinating today as it always will be. So, I appreciate you taking the time to talk today, and our conversation kind of meandered around lots of different
Yeah,
places.
we jumped into different places and peoples and stuff, right?
That's right. Yeah, we did move around. Well, that's what happens when you don't have a plan. Sometimes it goes phenomenally well, and sometimes, we are just able to finish, and that's good enough.
Well, we talk about some subjects. There's, for example, there's cultured people that will think that what I said today was not that important, and they are true. But there's people who had or hold no background on the Mayan ways. And I can repeat some stuff like, there's no single proof Jesus Christ, a Jew from the first century, the Son of God, or whatever was on Palenque in any way. And we are not inheriting any knowledge coming from the Torah or the Tanakh or any other
Well,
Hebrew.
I actually have something funny to say about that.
Let me wait. Let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
Another thing, Argüelles calendar is a hippie calendar from the 80s, and it is not Mayan. It is using Mayan symbols, but that's not Mayan. Domingo Paredes and the In La Cage is not truth. Another thing, there are no cacao ceremonies, only if you will want, as a general way, when you go to the fields to prepare your lands, and then you can incense the cacao tree, or you can do offerings to the owner of the land in which the cacao plant is, or when you harvest the cacao or stuff, well, you can pay back. But there are no cacao ceremonies for drink and to make the reunion, for to open the magical ways of your womb, or whatever. That is fake also. Why don't you better go and understand the real practices of, for example, the midwives, to know how to cleanse your womb, or to know how to deal with that? There are authentic practices. But, well, obviously, they are not offered in Santa Monica, California. You have to go to the lands, and that's another way. Another way that I have to say is that there are differences in calendars in the way in which we apply the calendar, but the basic order or the count of days is what is the Cholqui. We Maya Quiche peoples can read what happened on Palenque, for example, but Argüelles calendar functions for anything but to sell you lies. That is a truth. There's this phenomena of folklorization as the Eshkaret ways of portraying the culture as something that you can buy. And that is making a lot of damage also to Maya lands. So maybe, as you said, this is a podcast that for some people there's no content, but for some, let me tell you, there are a lot of things that we have to change. And I remember my teacher when we were on the mountains, he was still alive, and he said something like, now everybody's on the movies. After the 2012, it's going to be you and I seated alone watching the movie. And we are going to be the only ones remaining speaking about the Mayan calendar. And now, 10 years later, he was right. Where is all these people? Where are all those people that were saying that? They are vanished. And here we are trying to resolve and to sweep the mess they did. So it is this. I love this this podcast. Maybe I'm going to be hated. Well, there's no problem. But Jesus Christ was not in Palenque, and we are not inheritors of Mormon knowledge. No way.
That's amazing. That was a great rant.
Yeah, well.
And this topic, yeah, there is actually a lot to talk about. Uh, and it goes back to even our conversation about the mom, which is
Which was the origin of this
right.
conversation.
Uh, what we have, our situation we have now is, we're in a big mess. This whole thing is a big mess. And luckily, we have some resources. And now I always point people, if they ask, to go and watch Fernando's videos.
By the way, let me tell you something, and let me tell you something to the audience listening to this podcast. There's a friend who is now my apprentice and a fellow student of classes and stuff that is going to present a portal, internet portal for to access these knowledges now with an authentic, good calculator and an amazing graphic design to understand the Nahuals based on readings who have a linguistic background and the research and the work, my work on the mountains and the ways of the authentic knowledge that has been retransmitted during the generations. This man, Eduardo, is finalizing a study of Trecenas, the Nahuals, and we are going to include the knowledge of the numeral Nahuals, which has been the most preserved and secretive knowledge. And it is not invented, it is the way it is used. And once again, I will say this is not to play with. This is not a toy to play with. This is authentic knowledge because, for example, I can receive a baby knowing, by accurate knowing the nature of a numeral Nahual. If I will say stupidities as you can find in the community of your of your study and your computer in your house, well, no. So soon this portal, this internet portal, is going to be accessible. It holds and has such an amazing graphic design, and I have been working with him hand by hand and brain to brain, heart to heart, and soon it's going to be presented. So I'm very happy to announce that. I do also have my page, but my page is mostly for to hire me for ceremonies or for to enter into a calculator, but and to listen to some of the interviews. But it's not. My page is more to be a point of access for people who will want to hire me for my services, which are ceremonial services. This other portal is going to be for to the diffusion or for to spread knowledge as such, and for to begin to make an effort to go against this folklorization, these Argüelles lore, and this Mormons lore, and this whatever New Age stuff has been seen as the more popular things about what we suppose the Mayan knowledge, what they suppose the Mayan knowledge is, not what we really hold as Mayan knowledge. So we are going to make an announce, and this new page is going to be ready very, very soon, I think, full of beautiful, authentic, and amazing contemporary art about the Nahuals. I'm very proud about this student that has been really working hard onto that. As I'm proud about you, Paul, because due to this podcast and the things that we have been discussing and opening to the world. Maybe, well, the tricksters are not going to quote me on folklorization, but here and there they speak about some of my ideas. But anyways, we are exposed to that all the time.
Very good. Yeah, I'm excited to see Eduardo's next project always, and in the videos that I mentioned before are a really great resource for the public to have I think a proper introduction to a lot of this information. So, if anybody who's listening has never done that, go to YouTube and you can check out all the videos. And with Maya Daykeeper, I think it's Maya Daykeeper, right?
Yeah, Maya Daykeeper. Or you just can put, you can write
Nawal,
Nawal,
write in Nawal something, and it'll come up.
Nawal Kame, and then you can see some different versions, and then you can find mine. And then
I
from
think
there
he
you can
just
go.
he did a new Nawal Kame video, I think, recently.
He
So
uploaded Nawal Kame one. Yeah.
is it the last one, or
Um,
is there any more?
16 more.
Oh, all the numerals, you mean?
Yeah, no, the numerals are not going to be
Public,
the
not public.
numerals, not in this moment.
I think that's a good idea. Step by
Yeah,
step.
well, anyways, there was a problem because he uploaded 15 videos in the beginning, and then a couple of years, and the pandemic and everything stopped. So now he's retaking by Nawal Kame, but people is like, and where are all the others? Well, just go to the page. The information is over there, and you can follow that little segments. Those are not that full of information. We are trying to follow contemporary format in which you produce a video enough to hold the attention of the person before the person jumps into another meme, or it jumps into a meme or to another stuff. It's basic, beautiful information.
Yeah. Well, good. That I think we're doing our part to improve the culture online, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to
Oh,
me today. Yeah.
yeah. Well, you're welcome, and everybody's welcome to know the authentic knowledge, to listen to the authentic stuff. If you're going to go to a cacao ceremony, well, enjoy, but it's not Maya. And mostly what they told you is not true. But if you enjoy, well, enjoy the cacao. Why not? We Mayans, we don't use peyote, we don't use ayahuasca, we don't go onto cambo or anything like that. The Maya calendar, and in general, all the Mayan practices are without any stimulant.
Now, you guys like to smoke cigars, right?
Yeah,
That's a thing.
yeah.
I
Well,
saw.
it has been
What?
this has been a millenarian practice. The to smoke the cigar for healing purposes.
Well, I mean, I consider Mayans to be, the master farmers, and maybe ever in the world. And tobacco is one of their crops. And you could definitely argue that it was Mayans who introduced tobacco to Europeans, who then spread it around the world.
Yeah,
And
it may
so,
be, but the use of tobacco is in all the Americas. In reality, in all the Americas.
yeah, no, that's true. Well, because it grows everywhere. It's just a wild plant. And then
Yeah,
cultivating is another thing, but it also just grows. Like there's places in Canada where it's like another weed. It just grows.
exactly. Exactly. It happens here also in some places of Mexico and in Guatemala. In Guatemala, there was a peculiar situation. There was this man that was cultivating rusticana tobacco on the top of a mountain, but he died. He was very old. He left the fields like that, abandoned. But they began to produce flowers, and they began to produce seeds, and they began to produce a lot. But his land was on the top of a mountain, so it gets windy by February and March, and by August, September, then you can see all the surrounding areas with new plants and stuff. Now, it is full of tobacco over there. That was a peculiar and singular situation. And that's another thing we haven't talked in any moment about this, the introduction of GMO seeds from multinational soulless corporations in the Mayan lands. Because, for example, just to talk about this, and we haven't talked about this, it is very harmful. If we were talking about the Mormons or evangelicals or stuff like that, well, let's talk about the lands. When there's these big soulless international companies that hire peasants and and they pay, even they give the seats, and sometimes Maya peasants are very surprised of the way these new seeds grow up and how they resist uh, let's say insects or whatever, right? But those seeds usually dry and usually extenuate the land to the point in which the land ends being laden, completely laden. And that is another way of erosion of the Mayan culture, because this
It's a type of
this
war.
big,
It's an agricultural war.
there's a lot of stuff. And by the way, it's horrible what they are doing.
That's why these seeds are illegal in Japan and illegal in Europe, is because it's a war against whatever is growing in the place.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe for the next podcast, I can tell you about that, because it's another way in which things are going very wrong. Uh, Horribly.
I told you my biggest fascination of Mayan things is their agricultural heritage. I think, I said this before, I think they have the greatest agricultural heritage. And it's so underappreciated. Nobody understands how significant of an impact they had.
Well, the arts and the skills on the highland production of corn is amazing, 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 for sure. It is extenuating, but it's amazing for sure.
Yeah, with a long, long history.
Oh yeah, of course.
And then this is the part where it gets really trippy, is that it starts to be woven into the Mayan calendar.
Of
And
course.
that's the really crazy part. That's where it starts to get very esoteric and intense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As that.
Because Mayan cacao ceremonies are popular because people are trying to reconnect. Contemporary modern people are trying to reconnect in the cities with the ancient history of chocolate, because it had such an impact on the world and in every person on a personal level, especially to the women. It had and so they want to try to do something. They're desperate to try to do something to connect to the ancient history of chocolate, to give it more meaning even.
Well, maybe it's an offer, it's a spiritual offer. There's someone that needs, there's someone that sells. But at least I have to say it's not mine. But, well, I say it. That's not mine.
Well, no, fair enough. It isn't Mayan, but cacao is Mayan, right?
But the what? Oh, yeah. Of course,
Cacao,
yes.
the agriculture, the history, the heritage. That's all Mayan. Even I heard that the cacao bean was used as a coin.
Yeah, of course.
Isn't that cool?
Still, you can trade with cacao.
Sure, that makes sense. Yeah, it's awesome. Good
Yeah.
stuff. Well, that's pretty funny. You know, I think all these people, they need a guide. These cacao people, because it's a huge industry. I mean, if you're in Beverly Hills, you know, you're at a yoga studio or something, you could probably get a lot of big money customers
Yeah. You can. Well, in
who
LA,
want to
you
pay
can
you.
in the morning.
They
In the
want
morning,
to.
you can study Kabbalah. Then you can go for a Mayan ceremony. Cacao. You can
You
meet the new. Did you know there's this peculiar sect that is the Neo Essenians, and that's what you can do on LA. You can jump. And LA and some other cities. New York City is not less, and San Francisco is no less too. But what I'm saying to, and I want to be clear about my position about this, is do whatever you want. If you enjoy it, do it. The only thing that I have to say is this does not belong to culture. This is not the authentic Mayan ways. You can understand the authentic ways, but if the other attracts you, well, do whatever you want. Just don't harm the culture, or don't harm, or help us preserve the authentic. But anyways, people can do whatever they want. As studying Kabbalah, going to a cacao ceremony, then the opening circle for, I don't know, for cleansing the harm in the womb from generations and stuff. You can do whatever you want. Do it. Why not?
well, okay, so getting into the commercial side of the fact that there's a huge market for people that want to experience this stuff. They want to buy some of these products and services. Um, is this idea of, or this very phenomenon of Carlos Castaneda?
Hmm?
How many
Another
people would
one.
want to live this fantasy to be the mystical Mexican, you know, and to have those experiences, because a lot of people think that that's real, and it still had a big impact on their life anyways. And so for them, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really, like, Carlos Castaneda changed people's life, and
Oh,
people
yeah, a lot.
were
Of
thirsty.
course.
They loved it. They wanted this. They would buy his next book if he made it.
There's a lot of influences. This Julian Cateri that I was telling you that it's supposed to be an Ahir, is supposed to be formed by an authentic Ahir. His lore is about a mixture between Mayan knowledge from whoever, I don't know where, and Carlos Castaneda's stuff. He's always speaking about the intent of the universe and stuff like that. I study a lot about Carlos Castaneda's life. I met him, I knew his people clearly in the USA and Verde Claro here in Mexico. I saw a lot of stuff I was nerdy to understand that about, and I can see now, 30 years later, how this knowledge is used as another, it's just another, it's another dish on the menu now. In the beginning, I remember he's saying very interesting stuff. As for example, there was a conference here in Mexico City in which in the 80s he was talking about how we confused change or transformation in many ways just with a cultural way of using the words in a different way. He said that sometimes revolutions were not real revolutions, but only revolutions in language, which it means you talk about the same subject just differently, and that was the only revolution. The stuff is the same, but you talk differently about that. And I think that was very clever or at least it helped me a lot. As I said, for the collapse of the Mayan, there has been thousands theories. Well, hundreds, dozens of theories. Sorry. And every one of them has been built according to the paradigm or the linguistic paradigm or the linguistic scientific paradigm of the moment, and it is changing. And that is science, which is okay. But if you apply that, for example, in the terms of personal enlightenment, change, or transformation, he was true. Sometimes you are doing exactly the same, but you call it differently. And it makes sense. In that sense, it makes sense. Yes, true. He was a good writer, as to say. There's one day I will tell you. Maybe I can put it on commentaries on the podcast, because there's this person that made linguistic analysis and stuff, and he said if Carlos Castaneda would want to go better on to portray himself as a Latin American writer from those days, he will be one of the best, recognized as that for the power and the possibilities and the incredible creativity. But as a spiritual guy based on or anthropology or ethnographic studies, he's fake. And that is true. You can rescue things here and there that are some sort of valuable, but it depends on you. Once again, it's the equivalent of someone that previously digested something, then throw up, and then you eat pre-digested knowledge. Go on your own, go on yourself. Why not? What's the problem? It's like this researcher that I said, 60 years in her office. Oh my gosh. Why? How can I say everything you said is true or even legit in a sense? You're just quoting books and books and books and books. You don't know what is outside the bubble you live. Well, same way in here.
I think that's an amazing thing to consider, that the paradigm of the time that we're in is coloring our interpretation of reality, and that changes from generation to generation. And I think that applies now as it did during the days of communism or whatever was in fashion. Now it's all about transhumanism, so everybody's going to be part AI or something like that.
Even my teacher in another dimension of action, life and stuff, one day told me that when he was young, everything was atomic. Even the pencils were atomic. Then later on, everything was magnetic. And he says, now everything is quantum.
That's actually funny. It is quantum. I don't know. Now it's not. It's like AI something now.
Of course.
Right?
But he was like all the explanations for everything were like the atomic this, the atomic this, the atomic this. Then is the biomagnetism of animals. Then is the bio whatever. And he was, because there was this publication of this book.
It's always a French professor saying stuff like that.
And that movie that is the ramped as the Beep or something like that, and that made very popular. That was very popular, and that talked about a lot of supposed, like popular quantum theories and stuff. And he said, now everybody will want to understand the Mayan calendar first as an atomic whatever, then as a magnetic whatever, then is quantum. He was like asking me with his eyes, like, what is your position? And I was laughing, like, okay, yes, I get the point. That is very absurd. I will understand the Mayan calendar as the Mayan calendar is based on its own linguistics ways. And obviously the practices of the authentic practices, I'm not going to go. For example, what happened was that there was this man that arrived to the town looking for an elder and stuff. And when he was introduced to the council of elders, the woman that was speaking after him, she was saying that he had a lot of quantum energy. And I was there, and we were like, what? what is quantum energy? And we were like, and she was looking at us like bunch of ignorant Indians. And I was over there like, why this man is the chosen prophet of the new area just because he has a lot of quantum energy. Explain me
Well,
what
hold
is
on a
that?
second. Hold on a second now. How much different is that from the Mormons? It's the same
It's
thing. Just the Mormons
or
say,
the
well, this is
director of the Museum of America saying how ignorant we were.
that's also just the same as the Mormons. How different is
Yeah.
that, right? They just the Mormons say that this is a religion, whereas the scientists pretend it's not a religion. This isn't a religion,
Well,
even though it is. They act like it is. But the Mormons at least say, well, hey, this is our religion, Jesus Christ, whatever. And then they say something crazy. But the scientists always say, no, this is quantum. This is biomagnetic quantum. And now it's all AI something, Oh, no, this is all AI. No, 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 no.
yeah, yeah, I know. I know, but so isn't that interesting? I remember. Yeah, and I remember this Julian Cateri selling, giving you these audios and videos and stuff for you to be a spiritual guide in 20, a kyeh spiritual guide in 20 days. Oh man, I'm low on my quantum energy now.
Perfect. We can keep talking. It was awesome to talk to you. It's been a long time. So thank you so much. And we'll talk again.
Yeah, bye bye, and thank you for